Welcome to Leadership, the Secret Sauce, the podcast where we talk to extraordinary coaches and leaders to dive into the realms of leadership and coaching. We're your hosts, Dave Lipsky and Matt Dodson. So let's jump in with another guest and find out their answer to the question, what is your secret sauce? All right, before we begin, a quick shout out to our sponsor, Character Matters Coaching and Consulting, where they believe that your character is the compass guiding you through life's journey. Whether you're facing personal or professional challenges, they are dedicated to helping you discover and strengthen the core values that define who you are. Dave, who do we have on the podcast today?
I would like to welcome Lyssa DeHart, and I want to start off with a quick question. On a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being low, 10 being high, what is your energy level at this time?
It's pretty high right now, Dave, I have to say. So probably like about, I don't know, I heard one of your other podcaster guests go like 8.73 or something like that. I would say I'm a 9.72 right now.
Better than.
I admire those decimals. I admire that. Matt, how about you this morning?
Fractions are your friends. That's what I learned from Dr. Gene Hickman when I was in high school. And so I would say I am a 9.5.
9.5.
Yeah.
Very nice. You both have me beat. I am only an 8.375. But it's a rising 375.
Feeling it.
You feeling it? I feel it. I feel positive energy. Lyssa, you're on an airplane flight, and the person next to you says, "Oh, hi, I'm Dave or Matt or anyone." And what is it that you do, Lyssa? How would you answer that?
Well, this may end up being a theme for me today, but context is everything. So I might just say, I'm an author. I might say I'm a coach. I might say I'm an educator. And often I'll just say one thing because I don't want to be like, I'm a coach and an author and an educator and a mentor because I don't even know how interested they really are. Or are they just being nice before they put their headset in and watch a movie? And it sort of depends on how invested I want to be in the conversation because I might want to put my headset in and watch a movie. So I think it just sort of depends. I might say any of the 3 of those or 4 of those things.
Yeah, that's a great point. I have on, it's a real risk when you're on those longer flights, like how much you want to talk to the person next to you. But let's say we're going to play this out. So it's only a brief, like 2-hour flight.
Yeah, Anchorage to Seattle.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. And,
what would you say?
Yeah, and they say, "Oh, so you're a coach and an author. That's very interesting. How do you help people?"
Well, I think the way that I would probably just sort of introduce myself is that I am an author and a coach. And how do I help people? I think the people that I tend to work with the most are either people who are entrepreneurial or they're executives or they're founders of something. And if I'm looking at my like clients that are not coaches. And then if I'm looking at my clients who are coaches, I'm really doing a lot of training with ICF coaches for especially passing the ICF credentialing exam. But I also do mentor coaching supervision. And I developed a program called the Coaching with Metaphors, which is what my book is about, the science of coaching, light up the science of coaching with metaphors. So I would probably share those sorts of things. And when I'm thinking about metaphors, it's so fundamental to really listening below the surface. And so I really work on teaching people how to listen, which then means I'm probably, if I'm doing any good job of that, what do you do and who are you? And, what is going on in your world that has you flying from Anchorage to Seattle?
On a bumpy ride. That's what I would say. It's always bumpy. I don't know what it is, but yeah.
Is it always a bumpy ride?
My experience, this is like 2008. It was always bumpy. So
yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. The last time I went up to Anchorage, I don't recall it being bumpy, but I also have slept since then. So it could have been, and I don't remember.
Lyssa, so you've been in that Seattle Pacific Northwest for a long time.
We moved up here in 2000, at the end of 2013. My husband actually moved up here really at the beginning of 2013. He had been in the Air Force and retired, but when he retired, he got a director of operations position with an organization that was in New Mexico. And then they were doing a lot of mergers. They got VC money, and then they started gobbling up lots of smaller organizations. And he had a skill set around management that they were like, we need his skill set because we're merging 4 companies into one. So yesterday you were all wearing different t-shirts. Today you're all wearing the same t-shirts, and we need somebody who you got to get together here. And so this was an opportunity to move up to the Pacific Northwest from the Southwest. Long convoluted story short, I'd been up here during graduate school. I had taken sort of a walkabout up into the Pacific Northwest and fell in love with it. Then I met my husband, and he was from the Pacific Northwest, and he's like, I'm never going to live there again. And then here we are. And so he moved up earlier in the year, and then I had to sell my office, and we had to sell the house. I had to shut down my private practice, and moved up here at the end of 2013. And really, I had gotten my original coach training in 2007, 2008. I think I started 2007, ended in 2008. Had joined ICF in that time, was on the board in New Mexico for the ICF New Mexico chapter, given it up a bit because I was like, I don't have time for this. Being on the board, that was so much work. Just big shout out to everybody who does anything for ICF boards. That's just a lot of labor of love going on there. And moved up to the Pacific Northwest, had shut down my private practice, which was a therapy practice. And honestly, I was like, I don't know what I want to do. And so I was like, maybe I'll take a look at this coaching thing again. And so in 2014, I really started looking at coaching again. And that's where my coaching career really, really began to take off, was in the Pacific Northwest.
Thanks for sharing that. I think a lot of our listeners would really like to just hear about not just the evolution of your own practice, but what were some of the things that really kind of changed it to mature it. Because a lot of them may be thinking hey, I have a corporate job, or I have a job and I really want to go into my private, my own private coaching practice because I think that's what I want. Maybe not really knowing fully hey, what's going to happen, or some of the challenges or the courage it requires or things like that. But let me just ask you this question. How would you describe your secret sauce? I know we talked a little bit about this, but what is it that you've sort of nailed down on your secret sauce?
Well, those are 2 different questions in my mind. The one is, what does it really take in order to build a business? And I had the opportunity when my husband retired from the Air Force. I had a model. My mom was in private practice as a therapist. So I had a model that it was possible to be in private practice. And I also had somebody who's like, you need to get on insurance panels. You need to do this, that, and the other thing. And so I started while I was working for the Air Force as a therapist. And I was able to start to build my private practice while I was still working for the Air Force and while Michael was still active duty. And then I was also teaching at a university. So I also had these sort of separate income streams coming in. So I had my day job, I had my night job, and then I had my gig, the side gig of building a private practice. And that taught me a lot. And that was back in 2000. I started kind of late 2003 and then 2004. And I left working for the Air Force in 2005. So I gave myself some time to start to build my private practice. And mind you, therapy and coaching are very different. People have insurance for therapy. You get on insurance boards and you have funnels. And so you don't have to create and manufacture a funnel because people are like, hey, I have Blue Cross Blue Shield. You take it. Hey, could I come to you for therapy? And you're like, well, let's have an initial session and see if there's chemistry. And so it was sort of a similar but different thing. So I was learning about how long it took to build a business. And I would say, even in my therapy practice, I finally was able to support myself in 2007. So it took a few years, even with a funnel, to be able to have a practice that was big enough and where I was getting enough different people from different places to send people to me. I was going out and I was talking to the state, social workers with the state. I was talking to psychiatrist's office, and I was doing all kinds of things to get myself out there so that people knew who I was and would refer people to me. Fast forward to coaching. It's a very different animal. I mean, we don't have funnels the same way. You have to manufacture your own funnel. You have to get really clear about, in some ways, I know how much people struggle with this idea of niche. And honestly, I think the only reason for me that I finally just was like, fine, I'll just have a niche. What's my niche? And I came up with something was because I couldn't write to everything that I was interested in, right? I couldn't start to create content around everything that I was interested in. And so having the niche actually gave me a focus more than it was information for other people. It was really information for me as I was starting to really kind of develop my practice as a coach. But I also did other things as a coach. And this was something I had learned when I started my therapy practice, was I also was working with a coaching school. I was also working with the ICF chapter. I was the director to begin with of the ICF Washington State. When I moved up here, I became a board member. And as a board member, I needed a role. And my role was director of online education and this is in 2016. So this is pre-COVID. And ICF Washington State is a statewide chapter. So we had people living close to Idaho. We had people all over the place. In fact, we had members in New Mexico who were part of our chapter. And there was no way for them to do live in-person things. And I live on Bainbridge Island, and it's a 35-minute ferry ride, but that doesn't include traffic or sitting in a ferry line waiting to board a ferry. If you miss a ferry, you're sitting there for another hour. So it ends up being like a half day to full day event to go into the city, depending on how you're doing it and where the meeting is. And so I was like, I don't want to have to go to Seattle all the time. And so that really led me into doing this lunchtime learning series with the ICF Washington chapter. And that gave me an opportunity to network. And I would say I spent 2 years not making money, but networking and building relationships. And I guess that's sort of the transition into the secret sauce. And I really sat with that question. I think I was telling you, Matt, when you sent me the email about what's your secret sauce. And I was like, it seems like such just a glib, sort of simple little question. And then I even wrote back to you, like, I don't know what I'm thinking. Like, I don't know what my secret sauce is. So I, chat GPT, what is a secret sauce? And I'm like, asking, Google, what's a secret sauce? And there's all these, like a secret sauce is this, that, or the other thing. And it's kind of this one thing. And then I started thinking, I've been cooking since I was probably 5 because my grandmother was an amazing cook. And I just always loved hanging out, doing stuff with her. And I remember like doing stuff with her, like cutting up little tiny mandarin oranges and making, jelly or whatever. I was doing all kinds of stuff with my grandmother. And she had some recipes, but she tasted everything as she went. So I started thinking, like, how many singular ingredient sauces are there in the world? And yeah, you may have a fish sauce. Maybe it's really fermented fish. It's just water and fish, but that's actually 2 ingredients at that point. And then there's the fermentation process. So I don't know what bacteria go into that. So bacteria, if it's changing the composition and molecular structure of something, is an ingredient. And then there's thyme, not THYME, but TikTok thyme that goes into it. So there's just like these elements that go into a good sauce. And I don't know anybody who just takes fish sauce and throws it all over their noodles. And then it becomes a combination of different things that pull it all together. Maybe you take tomatoes and puree them and throw them over noodles too, but that's not going to taste as good. It's not going to be something you remember. Like there's not enough layering and complexity to it. So I started thinking about myself, and I'm like, I don't have a singular ingredient sauce. And I think one of the things that makes me good at what I do is that I have multiple ingredients, and they're based on context. So for instance, like I'm working with you, Matt, and you have a singular thing, or maybe not a singular thing, because there's probably no singular thing in coaching any more than there is in a really good sauce. But you've got whatever it is that brought you to coaching. The sauce that I'm going to bring to our conversation is going to be different than the one that I bring to David. And that ability to be in flow, to be flexible, to be sort of improvisational, to leverage all the things that I know, not to tell you what to do, not to be the expert, but rather to leverage it into the curiosity, so that as I'm holding the container of the coaching conversation to support you in your forward movement, I'm bringing to the table all these different ingredients that make me a thought partner for your process. So those are the things. And I didn't think about it that way when I was a therapist. I didn't really think about it that way when I started coaching. I thought like I needed this one thing, like this is the thing that sets me apart. It's a little like a niche, right? But in all actuality, I really think that we're all so complex. So I think my secret sauce is probably my flexibility. I'm not attached to outcomes in the same way that I used to be. Like, I got to get you there. Rather, I'm attached to you getting there, but how you choose to get there, the way that's going to most light up your brain, the way that you're going to remember it. Those dots, I don't want to create them for you. I want you to create them. I want you to connect them. I want you to own them. And so that's a big part of how I work with people, whether they're coaches or founders and executives and business owners or managers. I want those insights to come from you so that they become embodied in your understanding and awareness. It's kind of like you went from Anchorage to Seattle. You had an experience. You don't forget that experience. You had it. If you tell me about it, that it was bumpy, if I didn't have that experience, my likelihood of remembering that in a day, probably I might remember it a day. I do have a longer memory than a goldfish, but but in a year, am I going to remember that? Probably not. You clearly remembered it since 2008. Yeah. That's a different memory. And so that's what I want for the people that I work with, whether they're coaches or they're executives or founders, is I want them to walk away with agency and autonomy and the sticky outcomes. And that is a big thing for me. And I talk a lot about sticky outcomes because those are the things that a year later, the thinker comes back to you and says, you know what, I'm still using that. That is still up for me. That is still important. That still guides the way I'm making decisions. That still guides how I show up with courage and openness, even though I'm about to have a difficult conversation. And those things don't come from me telling you anything.
Yeah, I wanted to thank you and your husband for your service. Just want to make sure I got that out before I forgot. And I really appreciated your answer. And I get a lot of people that have been in therapy that want to transition into coaching. And with what you described, if I was in therapy with you years back, I would experience you in one way. And then if you were coaching me now, I would experience you in a different way. What's the difference of that experience for you?
It's sort of funny. In some ways, not that much. I wish I could say there. I think there's a lot of kind of, I don't know, superficial things like therapy's about the past and coaching's about the future. Have we all heard that? But the reality is, as soon as an executive comes to you and says, I had a meeting yesterday that did not go so well. Well, what are we talking about? The future or the past? And the moment the past comes into this conversation, guess what? It's the present. So I think this idea of like past and future and stuff like that is it's very superficial as an answer to the difference between therapy and coaching. I think a lot of the difference, and this is where I think coaches get into a lot of trouble because they want to share their expertise so much, is that actually therapists have expertise in things like trauma or whatever it is that they're working on with people. And so there's an expertise there. And so there's a lot of psychoeducation that goes on in order to create safety, because a person is going from dysfunction to function in therapy. And so when coaches start telling people what to do and how to do it and all that stuff, they're actually much more crossing a line into a more psychoeducational sort of framework. Like, let's talk about your mindset. You know what, David, you look like you're stressed out. Should we do some breathing? Let me tell you about the box breathing. And let me tell you about the science behind, the quick inhalation and the long, slow exhalation through your mouth, because Stanford's been doing a lot of research on that. And you should probably start to do more of that so that you are more embodied or feeling somatically or managing your, anxiety or whatever it is. Coaches are actually, that's in some ways therapy. That's what therapists do. They do a lot of psychoeducation as they're creating safety so that people can then go from functional to thriving. But that's where coaching really comes in. It's the you now are a whole, capable, creative, resourceful human being. I trust you. I trust myself. I trust the process. And my goal is not to teach you what you need to do. Frankly, there's plenty of things on TikTok, YouTube, podcasts, read a book. There's just it's all there. So how do we leverage what you know? And so one of the things that I'll do is I'll say to people, what do you need in order to be fully present here today? I think this is a common coaching question. And I'll often get people who say, I really need to take a few breaths. And I'm like, do you have a preference on how you do that? And I just had somebody in a coaching demonstration say, I was sort of shocked that you had me lead us through this breathing exercise. I don't need to lead people through the breathing exercise. Most of them have done enough of these sort of things. They know how to lead themselves through. Then they can lead me through it, which is a different form of who's in control here, right?
Yeah.
And
that's
so,
really the master certified coach skill of knowing when to do what. And
letting go.
Yeah.
Letting go of I need to be the expert who's going to guide you.
Yes. To quote one of our other favorite, Mel Robbins, let them. Anyway. Yeah.
And how willing and how comfortable are you with the discomfort of not being in control? Because that's all control stuff if I'm going to march you through processes. And in a therapeutic context, somebody has been traumatized by something, whether it's, they made a bad choice and they don't like their spouse, or whether or not they've had a trauma that is they were in a car accident or something more horrendous, or a lifelong pattern or habit of letting people cross their boundaries, or whatever it is, or anxiety or depression, or whatever the thing is that they're coming into therapy for. But there's safety, psychological safety, that has to be supported in order for them to even be at a place where they have the capacity to recognize their own agency. In coaching, I really think if somebody doesn't have that level of sense of self, they probably need therapy. And if they're coming into coaching because they prefer to be in coaching than therapy because it sounds better and everybody's doing it, then I think it's really, really important that you choose wisely your coach, and that coaches don't get confused. Am I doing consulting? Am I doing therapy? Am I teaching practices? Am I teaching? Because there's lots of people who are breathwork experts, but they're not doing coaching at that point. They're teaching, and that's fine. Nothing wrong with any of the roles that we take on: consultant, mentor, teacher, coach, therapist, whatever, all really important roles, but let's not confuse them.
Can I ask you, Lyssa, your, you do so many different things now. What does your average week look like? Is it really just so that people can get an understanding? 'Cause, from the outside, they'd be like, wow, you have a great portfolio of different things that you do. And I'm sure it evolved over time since 2013, where you're just hey, look, this is what an average week will look like. What does that look like for our audience to just really, because I think that's sometimes the question that they want to know. Okay, they've moved from therapist to coach, executive coach, maybe they're working in a company or anything like that. That was always the question that I got when I worked at my former company is really, how many hours a week do you really coach? And I'm like, well, you know what? Let's take a look at my calendar together and you'll see it's not as much time as you would think. Like this ain't happening, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. Spiritually, it would exhaust me, but like this is what it really looks like. So can you give like our listeners like what a typical week what a week looks like?
Let me turn the question back on you guys, which is you guys run a business and you may have your own businesses. You may have been executives in your past life, or just business. I mean, not just business owners. I see myself as an executive in the sense that I run pretty big programs and I have people who work for me, and I'm not doing it by myself anymore, which has freed up some time. But I watch my husband, he's the director of operations for an organization. And he probably works 70 hours a week, right? So, this idea of a 20-hour work week is probably somebody has figured it out, but I'm going to guess it took quite a bit of time to get there. And how much are they paying other people to do the work that they used to do for themselves? It's not that the work stopped, it's where how you're having the work done that it changes. So if I were to do a do-over on any part of my career, one of the things that I would do is I would have gotten an assistant sooner. Even though I wasn't making any money yet, and it was just an expense that was going out for a few years. I want to say that again, a few years, that as soon as I had somebody, even though they were very, very part-time, all of a sudden I had a different level of accountability of getting things done. I was still working probably 70 hours a week. And I probably still am working 70 hours a week. I just do it in different ways. Like I may get up early and work for a couple hours and then take a break for coffee, chatting with my husband, feeding the dogs, that kind of thing. And then I go back and I work again. And then I may take a break and then I come back and I may be working on something as I'm watching, I don't know, I started the Foundation series again. So I just started it again because the new season is coming out and I've got some time to catch up before I don't have to wait a week to watch a show. So I might be doing that and also doing something else at the same time. So is that work? Yeah, technically, but I'm enjoying myself. And so I think there's a difference also. I like what I do, so it doesn't bother me that I'm working that much.
I would echo the idea around, so I have a virtual assistant, and I would say it was probably the smartest move in terms of, I think more internally where you had to evaluate what can I really only do, and what can I give to somebody else to be able to do and find that satisfaction. I think that's probably the biggest difference maker in being a solopreneur or being an entrepreneur or being your own business owner, is finding out what that looks like and then having to explain it to somebody else, get it out of your head and into like the words when you're supposed to be really good at describing things and you realize, well, this is a little half baked, but let's try it out and see what happens. Yeah. And then coaching takes on a smaller portion of the week, I would answer. Like it may be 5 or 6 sessions in a week. And you're like, yeah. And then there's other hours of facilitation or other hours of thinking or developing or designing.
Yeah. Well, and it's sort of funny. I don't think this is a particularly uniquely American thing, even though I think a lot of times people go, this is sort of a Western concept of doing things on your own and doing it all yourself. But I do, because I meet people from all over the world, and a lot of people are like, I will do everything by myself because I can, or I want to, or I want to know how it works before I pass it on to somebody else. But when I have downtime, I'm doing stuff like working on my website. right? Or coming up with a blog article or something. And to your point, I at least have more time for that because I'm not editing the video anymore. I did for a long time, right? But I don't anymore. And I think they're better when I don't do them because I'm tired and there's somebody who actually knows how to use maybe, I don't know, whatever the video editing program is that they're using better than I do, Premiere Pro or whatever. And that gives me bandwidth, right? Like, so you talked about energy at the beginning of the show, and it's like, if you've got a pie, and this is the pie you get every morning, you get a fresh baked pie of energy. How are you spending it? And then there's the things that, kind of the big rocks, small rocks of Stephen Covey. Like, what are the big rocks that really need your energy? Like if you have kids or you have a significant other, or you have friends, or you have activities you want to do. Like I want to go travel, or I want to go do this, or I want to write a book. Those things are going to take time and energy. So where in that pie do they come out? And where am I spending energy that I could be paying somebody less than I would charge to do that for me? And so it becomes this whole thing too. It's like the equation of like value. So if I'm charging X number of dollars just because my math skills are of a social worker, I'll just use $100 an hour, but I can pay somebody else $25 an hour to do the same thing. That means I get 4 hours of time back. Yeah. Because it's probably going to take me 4 hours, which is really $400. And that would be $100 for them to do it. Yeah. So it isn't really like hour to hour. And so you have to start kind of thinking like that when you're considering like, how do I get the support that I need and the accountability, but also the time. Like that's the only thing in my life I cannot purchase back other than by leveraging somebody else's.
Yeah. Lyssa, one of the questions that we have, we want to make sure we ask you is what would you want from a coach being where you are as a business owner, spending tons of time supervising or mentoring coaches? What do you really look for in a coach?
That's a great question.
What has to happen in that chemistry session with you for them to go, yeah, this is, it's a hell yeah versus hell no?
Yeah, that's such an interesting question because I think more of us need to be asking that question, what would we want? I'm running an MCC incubator for people who want to get their MCCs. And it was so funny. One of the participants was being coached by one of the guest MCCs. And there was so much silence and spaciousness for her to do the work. And I have yet to meet a CEO or a business owner or a founder. Now, there's things they don't know because they haven't done it before, maybe, but often it's relational stuff. And all of us have tended, if we've gotten to a certain age, like, 6 months old, we have relationships. And so, there's the elements of like, they may not be going well, but we have had these lived experiences of relationships. And that's typically why we get, wrapped up around the axle on having difficult conversations because so many of them don't go well. So I am getting to your question, but I think what I need is I know myself. Probably, I wouldn't say I know myself 100% because all of us have, blind spots where we're not fully aware. So I want somebody who can maybe reflect a blind spot, but I also want them to give me the space. I don't need them to tell me what I should do. If I ask them, I want to build a chicken coop. Yeah, sure. Give me the structure. Give me a pattern I like. Tell me how many 2x4s I need to purchase, how many screws and what all the tools are I need in order to build a chicken coop. But most of the reason people come to us for coaching and the reason I would go to a coach is not because I'm building a chicken coop. It's because I'm struggling with something. Like, for instance, I'm working 70 hours a week and I'm not walking enough. So I really need to figure out like what is my off button so that I can actually transition into maybe walking more and prioritizing myself. Yeah, maybe I come back and go back to work again, but then I'm making sure that I carve out that time. And clearly, if I'm not doing it, there's something in there that I need to explore. And I need that external perspective to maybe go, what did you just say there? What did you just hear yourself say? What's showing up for you as something that might be the thing that stops you from going out and walking the dogs in the afternoon when it's nice. I have to do the work. It's my work to do. If I have a trainer then say, this is what you need to do, I don't know. How many of us have, as soon as we stop going to the trainer, we don't do it anymore?
Wait, I've been doing that for 10 years. Are you saying it's not working?
I don't know. You tell me, David.
No, it's definitely not working. I
guarantee you it's not working.
Thank you. You know what? Now the fact that two of you said it, I think I'm.
Well, actually, it was you and Matt who said it.
Oh, yeah. I don't. Yeah, listening to myself is on my list of development areas. What are 3 resources you would recommend for people?
Well, as soon as you can afford, even somebody for 2 to 3 hours a week, like it doesn't have to be a ginormous investment of like $4,500 a month or something like that. You don't need to do that, but having, even if you have a kid who's in your life and they want to play with your social media, find somebody. And kids are great because they're usually so social media savvy, they can really help you. And they probably don't charge you a ton of money, although that may be changing. But get accountability where you have to provide something for somebody else to do the work, learn how to delegate, learn how to do these things. So that would be a tool that I think teaches multiple tools when you have people working for you. I think another tool is you yourself. What is your level of curiosity about your own experience, about yourself, about the things that, to your question earlier, what do I need in a coach? What would I really need in a coach? And that's going to inform you so much for yourself to start really going, oh, if I need something where I have a coach who will be quiet and really ask precise, concise questions that really support me to do a reflection of myself, then how do you begin to develop that for yourself? You don't have to take a class, but there's so many ways to learn this stuff.
What's a first coaching book you would take off your shelf? I noticed some really good books in the back as well. So what do you refer back to?
I'd pull mine off, but if it wasn't mine, what would be the first? I don't know. I'll tell you what's really interesting. I was thinking about this morning. I read nonfiction, but I don't love to read nonfiction. And part of the reason I don't love to read nonfiction is because I write and I don't want everybody else's ideas cluttering up my head and then I accidentally plagiarize them. So I read a lot of fiction. And what I've discovered is that for me, human issues show up in fiction. And so I have an opportunity to think about interactions and human concerns and human experience through a fictional lens. And that really is something that I love. And so I read a lot of fiction and all kinds of fiction, everything from bestsellers to science fiction to, I don't know. I don't read much romance, but like there's a lot of other fiction out there. And I find that is a way that science fiction honestly is probably my favorite genre. And so I learn a lot. I question a lot of things as a result of how I listen to fiction. So I think there are so many really good books. Coach the Person, Not the Problem. I really like Radical Listening. I love the book Women Who Run with Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. I think Miguel Ruiz's work on Nothing is Personal. I love the Covey work, even though he did a really good job of rebranding some key psychological theories. I think that he made it really digestible. And so I really think his the 7 Habits is really important. And so I think there's a lot of different things, but then also, what do you love to read and keep your mind active,
Yeah. Dave, what's your reflection? Can I go first? I think I got one.
Go, Matt.
Yeah. Even I don't think I've ever done that, is just asked to go first. one of the things that you said, Lyssa, that I think is really important for our audience, or just because sometimes in the coaching community, we're like, well, pick your niche and or niche. And what I heard you say, it didn't limit you. And I think that's sometimes if you're a new coach and you're starting out and you're wondering like, hey, how do I ever get to this place? Lyssa's been doing this for a long time. How do I can't get there overnight? And she talked about picking a niche. How do what I heard is it doesn't limit you. It's just something you're choosing at this present moment. It's not something in concrete. And I think that's really important. And then I would say the other thing is you recently had a blog post about being masterful in all of your coaching conversations. I recommend someone go to LyssaDeHart.com, look at her blog post. And that's a really wonderful article just to begin to understand how to be masterful in all of your conversations. And like that is you described it as like an aspirational goal. So, we can all look at you and compare and wonder, like, how do I get to that place? But really, the striving towards masterful it was going to take time, and just appreciate your other comments. So, Dave,
I just want to say I so appreciate your positive energy, grit, and depth of thought around what you do, and that it takes work, and how you translate that into writing and coaching and teaching. How do you recommend people get in touch with you?
You can always go to my website. Support at LyssaDeHart.com is a great way to get a hold of me. Also, it'll all get funneled to me through support. And LinkedIn. If you want to connect with me, unless you're trying to sell me something, I love to connect with people, and I like to see what you're up to, and I'll have conversations with people through LinkedIn as well. So, LinkedIn is my primary social media. I have an Instagram and Facebook, but I honestly don't love them the same way I love LinkedIn. So that's really where I primarily meet people, is through LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm. I'm just going to share one. Thank you so much. And just read our sponsor message to close it out. Are you feeling stuck or overwhelmed? Character Matters Coaching and Consulting provides leadership coaching and consulting to empower you to overcome obstacles and reach your full potential. Visit charactermatters.com to learn more about their transformative coaching and how to get connected to Matt for your organization. Thank you so much, Lyssa. I've thoroughly enjoyed this.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So just also a quick shout out. So if there are any listeners that will be at the ICF conference in October in San Diego, California, there's a Marine base, not an Air Force base. But if you want to meet Lyssa, she'll be there. You'll be speaking, as well as Dave and I will be also speaking with Helen Dan. So we would encourage you to attend. It's well worth your time and effort, and also just to get connected in terms of really networking a lot of the coaches down there. So until then, thank you very much. Thanks for listening. If you love this podcast, please share it with another coach or leader. Make sure you go to the show notes to get all the resources from today's episode.